So the Pelicans lost last night to the Brooklyn Nets. Anthony Davis had himself a big game. And this has been the trend for them for, I would say, the last 10 games or so, as the team is falling out of the playoffs in the Western Conference. And sure, they've had injuries and things like that, and you could argue Alvin Gentry's not that good of a coach, and I'll get to all that, but the basis of this video is Anthony Davis perhaps a little overrated? Because a conversation is happening now on the internet where people will say, well, James Harden is getting his Rockets to win, and yet Anthony Davis can't get his Pelicans to win, so what's going on? Well, I think the first thing we need to realize is it's a lot easier for James Harden to have an imprint on the game than it is Anthony Davis, because James Harden's usage rate in the last 10 games is 40%. It makes sense why, because he can just bring the ball up floor himself, and it's not like the defense can play deny defense on Harden. You can just bring the ball up and there you go. Then he can get into whatever he wants to do. Whereas for as good as Anthony Davis is, he still needs to get the ball, whether it's on pick and rolls, post-ups, cuts to the basket, or whatever. Sure, you can have him bring the ball up floor himself, or he can bring it up in a transition off of a rebound or whatever, but it's not the same thing, right? I don't think I'm breaking new ground by saying this. I think everybody knows that. But I do think it needs to be reiterated anyway. A guy like Davis just needs a lot of dudes who can get him the ball, and it just makes it a little tougher for him to have that impact. I mean, that's one of the reasons why we praise Jokic so much, because he's kind of redefining how a center can impact the game, and I would hope that Davis, as he gets older, can improve his ball handling. I mean, he already has gotten better. I think he's gotten up to, at least for one point this season, he was near 5 assists a game, so Davis is still improving as an offensive player overall. But even then, I mean, his 28 and 5 and 14 boards a game and all that, it just doesn't compare at all to James Harden, who can do all his stuff. So that's number one I think we should remember. Number two, I think people are forgetting what just happened in the playoffs with Anthony Davis, where he destroyed a Blazers team that everybody thought was either going to beat the Pelicans or the Pelicans were going to win in a 6 or 7 game series. And sure, there were other reasons for it in terms of the Blazers pick and rolls being stupid, but Davis was a monster in that series. And in round 2 against Golden State, sure, Steph Curry was not all the way healthy, but the Pelicans nearly got that series to a game 6. I mean, I think it was game 2 or 3 or something. They lost by like 5 points, so I think Davis dominating the Blazers and then nearly getting the Pelicans to a game 6 against Golden State, I think that proves right there the guy can win you basketball games, okay? Now, at the same time, can you suggest that he has been a little disappointing this year? If anything, I would say on defense, just because the defense, it's fine when him and Drew are in the game, but the moment either one of them are not in there, and to state the obvious, that of course means when Drew is not in the game but Davis is still in there, it kind of falls apart. And as someone who predicted these guys to be a top 5 defense, I thought Davis would just be so good that while it would matter who was on the floor with him somewhat, they would never get worse than being like the 11th best defense, no matter what lineup was in the game, as long as AD was in there. And that is not the case, as they've been a bad defensive team. And what's interesting is all the on-off numbers for the whole season would suggest this team sucks when he's not in the game and they're really good when he's in there. In the last 10 games, they're actually a negative net rating when Anthony Davis is playing. And I know part of that is because Mirotic is hurt, and the trio of Davis, Drew, and Mirotic was really good when they were able to play, and Elfrid Payton made an impact for them at the beginning of the year because it, if anything, just moved Drew to the 2-guard spot so he could devote a little bit more energy to defense and scoring as opposed to playmaking and being a bit inefficient from the floor. So the injuries have not helped, but if all it takes for you to kind of nosedive is losing Mirotic for a stretch and losing Elfrid Payton, that doesn't exactly say the best things about the rest of the team, right? Now I guess we can move on to Alvin Gentry. So I don't think Gentry is one of the better coaches in the league. I think he is average to sometimes kind of bad. This team's crunch time offense a lot of the time has been give the ball to Anthony Davis and hope something good happens, and that has resulted in a few jump shots. And you would think if he had a better coach who would have him moving off the ball, someone setting a screen for him, forcing a switch, whatever it may be, that could result in some better offense. And of course, because Mirotic has been hurt, the spacing's not going to be as good because, yeah, Julius Randle's been legit, but he's going to do all his stuff around the basket. And then when you look at the perimeter talent of this team, I mean, there's one guy who can do anything with the ball in his hands. Sure, Etuan Moore is a solid, 13 points per game scorer, but he's really like a seventh man who has had to start for this team for the past few years because they haven't had any other shooting guards worth a damn. Ever since they traded Buddy Hield, pretty much. So basically what I'm getting at is you put all that into a blender with the fact that it's just not as easy for Anthony Davis to make an impact the way that James Harden can, and there you go. But again, could you suggest that Anthony Davis has been 3% disappointing? Yeah, I don't think it's ridiculous. You would think that he would be able to just dominate a team like the Brooklyn Nets to get a victory. But with that being said, I am not off the Anthony Davis bandwagon by any means, and I really hope my Celtics trade for him. So I think that's it. I'm not going to try to stretch this to 10 minutes. I think I've said what I need to say, and that's pretty much it.